September 2012 is an often overlooked part of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Coming off the lows from hand loops, unreasonable one-turn kills, or just general unfun gameplay, the September 2012 ban list attempted to alleviate some of these major issues with the game, and I think it did a great job. Now commonly referred to as REDU Format, with well over a dozen viable decks, where duelists can show great skill expression. Edison Format is the peak for Yu-Gi-Oh's 5Ds era. Could REDU be the peak for Sexual? Well, let's find out. For the main deck, I have 3 copies of Dragunity Arma Mistletoe. Mistletoe is our main extender in the Dragunity deck. When he's summoned to the field from the hand, we can equip a Dragunity from the graveyard to him, which usually ends up being the Phalanx, which can then be summoned to make an immediate level 8 synchro. And the main way to get a Dragunity to the field to summon a Mistletoe is to summon ducks from your hand. Upon normal summon, you can equip the Phalanx from your graveyard to your ducks. So when you open with the ducks and Mistletoe, along with the Phalanx engraved, you can access pretty much your entire deck and do whatever you want to do, be it an OTK or set up a near unbreakable end board. This is just one of the many selling points for this deck in REDU format. Ducks is a free level 6 or level 8 synchro monster, and whenever you draw Mistletoe, you're just able to do that much more. So if you were to compare this deck to something like Yu-Gi-Oh or Windups, its basic plays are just that much higher. But then again, that's usually how combo decks tend to be. And in order for ducks and Mistletoe to do something, we need to play Phalanx. While Phalanx is actually a pretty poor draw on its own, it works with a lot of cards in our deck. Say we draw the Phalanx and Mistletoe, well then we can just normal summon this, special summon Mistletoe, bring this back and go for an 8-star. Or if we can pitch this card to the graveyard, seeing as this is a dragon with 500 attack points that's a tuner, it works with a lot of good cards in this deck. Then we can bring this back and go into our level 6-star plays with ducks. And that can let us do many unfair things. But I will do a full combo tutorial on this deck and what you're aiming to do with it, so make sure to check that out. Then we of course play 1 copy of the limited Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. With Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, or Red MD as he's commonly referred to as, we can revive any dragon from our graveyard, or even summon one from the hand. Red MD was eventually errated to be a once per turn effect, but back in REDU format he was not. And there are plenty of ways to abuse this effect multiple times per turn. And thanks to our Dragunities, we can search him from the deck with Atom. Then I play 2 copies of White Stone of Legend, and 2 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. As you will see when we get to the spell cards, the Blue Eyes and White Stone play a very pivotal role in this deck. And this legendary creature is a very powerful monster we can bring back with Red MD. And with Phalanx, we can make an even more powerful one. 1 Koa'ki Meiru Drago. In REDU format, there's quite a lot of light and dark decks. Something like Chaos Dragons, Agents, or Dark Worlds immediately gets shut out by Drago. 1 copy of Debris Dragon. There are actually no good targets in this deck for Debris Dragon to bring back and synchro with. However, we don't play this card for its normal summon effect. Being a 4-star dragon allows you to bring this guy back with Red MD, or directly from your deck with Atom, which we then can synchro away into a Trident Dragon and just OTK our opponent outright. On the September 2012 ban list, Debris Dragon was put to 2, so technically you could play more copies of this card should you want to use it as a normal summon. However, in this version of the deck, I'm only using Debris Dragon as a utility piece, thus I'm only playing 1. And for our non-dragon combo piece, we play 1 copy of Blackwing Sephiroth the Elite. This card is also used in the combo. Even though it's a wing beast, you can search it with your Dragunity Gay Durg. And this is one of the ways we can utilize Red MD's effect multiple times per turn. And for the last 2 monsters, I played 2 copies of Tragodia. I wanted some defensive cards in this deck that actually helped me advance my own game state, and Tragodia is great at doing that. Trag deals nicely with Thunder King Ryo, seeing as you can attack over it or just take it by discarding a level 4. Additionally, the Trag can make your opponent cautious into attacking you, thus allowing you to prolong the game to see your combo pieces and eventually go for your combo. And if we get to the full combo, we can draw our entire deck with Rejuve, and having a Trag in hand is a very nice counterplay to our opponent's push. For the spells, I play 3 copies of Dragon Ravine, and 2 copies of Terraforming, effectively making it 5 copies of Ravine. If you play modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you may be used to the broken field spells that allow you to search any of your combo pieces and effectively work as starter cards, and Ravine was one of the first ones. With Ravine, we can either discard to dump a dragon from our deck to the grave, or search ducks or phalanx from our deck. The discard part is very important, seeing as it does add 1 more draw in the end phase with Super Rejuve. And Ravine is one of the many reasons why I use 2 copies of Whitestone and 2 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. With Ravine, we can discard Whitestone to search Blue Eyes, thus giving us another card in our hand for cards like Trade-In or any discard cards like Card Destruction. And the Whitestone granting us a search for blue eyes effectively allows us to replenish our hand after we pitch with Ravine. So the discard with Ravine doesn't feel as costly. As REDU Format is played out in Master Rule 2, meaning there's a field spell war. Field spell war means that if your opponent has a field spell and you activate your own, their field spell will be destroyed. Thus, this also gives you 5 outs to cards like Gates of Dark Worlds or Necro Valley, and as long as you can get your search off once, that is usually good enough. There's no real great other field spell you can play in this deck, it's pretty much only Ravine that works with your deck, so there's no point in playing another field spell and the third terraforming to search them out. And I don't want to play 6 copies of Ravine because you can clog on this card and it just ends up doing nothing in your hand. Then I play a lot of draw cards. Starting off, I have 3 copies of Super Rejuvenation. In Edison Format, Rejuve is a pretty good card, and in Redu, it is way better. Thanks to Dragon Ravine, we can pretty naturally just get our discards in by just playing our deck normally. So you don't even need to use all of your resources in one turn to maximize the draws of Rejuve. Even using this card as a pot of greed in the end phase is usually pretty good. And obviously the games where you do draw 3 or 4 cards with this card and you eventually draw Rejuve into Rejuve, that's just a bonus. But if Rejuve draws you 2 cards in the end phase, that is still pretty good. However, since this deck doesn't really rely on Rejuve that much to get your plays going, you can definitely side this card out when you go second. As in REDU Format, the Dragon deck has a much better control of its resources than the Dragon Turbo deck does in Edison Format. Then I play 3 copies of Trade-In. Thanks to Ravine and Whitestone and Gator, there are near infinite ways to access level 8 in this deck. So even though you only play 2 blue eyes, getting to the blue eyes white dragon with your Trade-In is very easy. And to go along with the Trade-Ins, I play 3 copies of Cards of Consonance. As you can clearly tell in the picture, you're meant to discard Whitestone with this. But if you don't have the Whitestone, you can also discard Phalanx, or Debris Dragon. Similar to the Trade-In, where if you go Ravine, dump Whitestone, add Blue Eyes, you can discard the Trade-In, you can also add Phalanx with Ravine and pitch it with Cards of Consonance. This just makes your deck flow way better than Dragon Turbo does in Edison Format. It is pretty rare that you brick on these draw cards because there's just so many ways to get to its targets. And once you get one draw card going, you can usually lead into a string of plays where you get multiple draw cards going and then you just draw your entire deck with Rejuve in the end phase. 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. Life points are just a resource, and even if your opponent is at 12,000, they can easily die in one turn thanks to Trident Dragon. So in this deck, Upstart giving them 1,000 life points is literally irrelevant. And the fact that you get to play a 37 card deck and just play plenty of draw cards which naturally work well together is very good. Then for some of the power spells, I play 1 copy of Pot of Avarice. In REDU Format, Avarice is at 1, but you're pretty likely to see this card when you go for your entire deck. And putting back your resources with Avarice can give you the longevity you need. 1 Card Destruction, being a staple in any deck that plays Super Rejuvenation and Dragons. You probably win the games you resolve Card Destruction paired with a Rejuve because you just get to see your entire deck in the end phase. And even if you don't, using Card Destruction to unbrick a hand can be very good. Unless you play into Dark Worlds, so make sure to side that card out if you're playing against that deck. 1 Monster Reborn. Thanks to Red MD, this deck probably has the strongest Monster Reborn in the format. If you reborn back to Red MD, you can instantly summon a Blue Eyes or a Gator and continue your plays from there. And the last spell is 1 copy of Heavy Storm. For the extra deck, I have 1 copy of a Queen Dragoon Jin. Queen is used in our main combo to bring back a level 6 and go into our rank 6 play. And her battle protection effect is also very nice. 1 copy of Steel Swarm Roach. Against Chaos Dragons and Agents, should you not have access to Drago, you can make Roach to close out the game. 2 copies of Erratic Dragon King of Atum. Atum can be made with 2 level 6 dragons, which there are plenty of. And with this effect, we can summon any dragon from our deck, but make its attack and defense 0. That is not a concern thanks to Jin protecting our dragons from battle, and he cannot attack for the rest of the turn. But there's also a way to circumvent that restriction. 1 copy of Insector Excabeetle. Excabeetle can deal with any face-up card on the field, so you can clear their Messenger of Peace or their Wind-Up Cinemains and go for your OTK. 1 Photon Strike Bounzer. When you play against decks like Wind-Up or Dino Rabbit, you can make Photon Strike Bouncer to negate their monsters, if a Drago alone does not shut them out. 2 copies of Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger. We can overlay Gaia Dragon on top of our Atum, and gives us a 2600 monster that can actually attack. Gaia Dragon is also a wind attribute monster, so you can make him even if you have Drago on the field. And the last exceed is 1 copy of Erratic Sun Dragon Overlord of Heliopolis. With Heliopolis, we can tribute any number of monsters from our hand or field, and then destroy that many cards on the field. And if we tributed any dragons with Heliopolis' effect, that also adds to the count of Rejuve. For the Synchros, I play 2 copies of Dragunity Knight Vajrayana. Vajrayana, similar to Dux or Mistletoe, allows us to equip the Phalanx from Grave and then use its effect to summon him. You can also send an equip attached to Vajrayana to double his attack, but this card is mainly used to ladder up into a level 8 synchro, or to keep the Phalanx on field and then you overlay into a Tum. 1 Dragunity Knight Gayderg. Gayderg allows us to search and then pitch any level 4 or lower dragon or winged beast monster from our deck. Generally we use him to search and then discard the same card, thus allowing him to be a foolish burial. This allows us to get Sephiroth the Elite into rotation, which is useful for our RedMD plays. For the 8-star synchros, I play 1 copy of Scrap Dragon. Scrap Dragon, being a dragon, allows us to bring this back with RedMD should we need to. And once we got him the search from Dragon Ravine, it's just a free card to pop away with Scrap Dragon. Stardust is the only way that this deck can deal with a Dark Hole, because the board is quite vulnerable to a board wipe. Again, being a dragon is also additional utility, seeing as RedMD can bring him back. And the last synchro is 1 copy of Trident Dragon. I usually make Trident Dragon with Phalanx and Blue Eyes, but you can also do this with Debris Dragon and a level 6 dragon. Similar to Scrap Dragon, if we have Dragon Ravine face up on our field, we can pop this for free with Trident Dragon and then go for our OTK. That is it for the extra deck. For the side deck, I have 2 copies of Effect Veiler. Against the decks where Veiler is good against, it is really nice that you're able to draw into this in the end phase with Rejuve. And especially post side, when your opponent knows you're on a combo deck, they will try to end the game as quickly as possible. So you need some cards to stop their engine from just running all over you. And this deck can't really side trap cards as well as combo decks usually can, because Dragon Ravine is already a card that they want to hit with Mystical Space Typhoon. So since there is a good chance that they will keep MST in against you to hit your Ravine, it doesn't really make sense for you to side in a bunch of trap cards expecting them not to be removed. So Effect Veiler just ends up being a more safe non-engine to combat what they're doing. Then I play 2 copies of Maxi. If Windup can go first against you and just call spells, you kinda just lose. However, there are some games where the Windup deck doesn't go for the Shockmaster lock because they simply do not open the combo. So generally against the Windup deck, I side both Veiler and Maxi to have some additional coverage for their deck, as they both do a good job at preventing Shockmaster. And you could argue that a Windup player should just go for the combo anyway if they see that you're playing Dragunity combo. Because if Windup go for Shockmaster, give you 10 cards or whatever with Max C and just call spells, and they have a warning face down so they just warning your normal summon, you kinda still lose. But with the 2 copies of Effect Veiler, you can actually draw into a hand trap to stop their combo in its tracks. And the main deck copies of Tragodia also deters them from going for the Max C challenge and just OTKing you. I side a 2nd copy of Drago. Against, for example, Chaos Dragons, Agents, or Dark World, it's pretty good to just normal summon a Drago turn 1 and pass. And thanks to your Dragunities all being wind, it doesn't really matter that you can't summon light or darks. Even your 2 8-stars are wind and earth. And you can also go for the entire Trident Dragon OTK under Drago. And if you have Drago, they can't use Fade or Gorse or Drag. Additionally, there's also control-based variants of the Dragunity deck, where you can play multiple copies of Drago in the main deck. Then as this deck struggles sometimes when you go second into established fields or to deal with a Thunder King Ryo, I have 3 copies of Heretic Dragon of Tefnut. For a while, I had an entire Heretic engine in this deck, but eventually I cut it down to just 3 copies of Tefnut. I realized Tefnut on its own was actually still pretty good. It's a Cyber Dragon, level 6-star dragon, which you can still use to make a Tom or your Synchro plays. And even in the hands where you go summon Tefnut, and then you maybe just tribute summon for a Mistletoe or tribute summon for another Tefnut, and bring out Blue Eyes from your deck, depending on the configuration of your hand, you can still go for some pretty impressive plays. For example, a special summon Tefnut, tribute summon from Mistletoe, summon Blue Eyes from your deck, and equip Phalanx, allows you to go for the Trident Dragon OTK. And even if you just use this as a Cyber Dragon, it serves the same purpose as Mistletoe for the combo, where you make a Tum. 2 copies of Offerings to the Doomed. Even though I don't play Reckless Greed, Offering is really good in this deck despite skipping you a draw phase. If you have Ravine or you go for a Rejuve combo, skipping 1 draw phase doesn't really matter, because you already have guaranteed follow-up. And Offering is just a quick spell monster removal. So you can deal with Thunder King, you can deal with anything in their turn. And since Ignition Priority is no longer a thing in REDU format, spot removal is very good. 3 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. You can deal with floodgates like Messenger of Peace pretty easily with just your engine. But when you play against cards like Macrocosmos, Vanity's Emptiness, and the like, you really want MST to just remove it. The last 2 side deck slots are 2 copies of Needle Sealing. Against windups, you want something to draw into to either stop their entire combo, or something you can draw into a Shockmaster lock. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my 2nd channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.